Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arbury Road podcast here on a Monday night with myself, Dermot and Paco Ruzzante. Paco, how are you doing?
Hey there, everything good? Really happy to be here in this special day.
All good, exactly. Happy International Women's Day to everyone at home. We hope you've been celebrating. Now, whether you're gone to the march or not, we decided to give it a skip this year, but I'm sure there are demonstrations organized all over the world. I hope everyone's doing something to mark the day. And Paco, we're going to start tonight with talking about a new initiative from the EU, from von der Leyen herself, regarding the gender pay gap. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so first of all, just to clarify, we are not in the march for health COVID reasons, but we are there with them in spirit, let's say. And hopefully we will participate next year. It's particularly important this year for what is happening in Poland. We talk about it on Arbury Road. We talked about it in the past weeks and also with Moretti last week. So it's really important this year, the 8th of March. On the 4th of March, von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, launched this initiative, this proposal, basically presented a directive at the European Parliament to strengthen the application of the principle of equal pay for equal work. And the proposal will now be discussed at the EU Parliament and then by the single nation state. So what is a directive? A directive is a legal document, but differently from other laws and other measures. This basically establishes a principle. So like the states are required to do something, in this case, reduce the gender pay gap, but it does this without dictating the means to achieve the result. So this could be, well, in a way, it's of course a really good initiative if it's going to be approved. In the other, it remains on the national state how to enact this, and this, something perhaps more strict, something perhaps more normative could be better. The interesting bit, in my opinion, is this as part of the proposals for the employers which have more than 250 employees. These employers will be forced to make public their data about the gender pay gap in their companies. And if the gender pay gap, let's remember, otherwise Georgia will kill us, that the gender pay gap is the difference in the hourly wage between a man and a woman. So if the difference between what women employees and men employees earn is more than 5%, basically a procedure will start, and if of course the employees cannot justify this with logical reasons, with objective reasons, a procedure will start, and together with the trade unions, they will be forced to change the wage. So I think it's a really interesting proposal, and I think could lead not only to this, but also the fact that they're public. It could make that people know which employers are more careful, are more sensible to gender equality than others, and so that could help, I think.
Yeah, making things public is definitely extremely important. Excuse me. I wonder though, Paco, to me, it doesn't sound like enough, to be honest, It's just a directive, as you said. The obligation is still on each individual nation to apply the rule as they interpret it. It's not very strict. We're about to come out of hopefully this year or early next year, we come out of the pandemic. The furlough schemes that have been helping people stay economically afloat are going to vanish, and it's going to affect women disproportionately, like it always does. Would you have liked to see the EU go one step further? Surely.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially as we said also in the past edition of the pandemic, like the weight of economic weight of the pandemic was not paid by both genders equally. Women lost way more jobs, and especially in countries where their situation was already bad, where they were already working less than men, the gender gap increased ulteriorly. So definitely, especially I think it's time for the EU to make some more concrete measures, like economic measures, because in the end, I believe that a big part of this is also economic, like in the sense of it doesn't make sense too much to punish the employers. At least talking with people, the sensation is that nobody, privileges. Well, there is still, of course, a sort of prejudice, and there are a lot of cultural factors which make so that employers pay men employee more. But my sensation is that also there are also economic reasons for which, like, for example, maternity leaves and all these kind of rights of women, like, make it more expensive for the employer, and perhaps in a market where you have a lot of competition and a lot of difficulties, that is a further difficulty for an employer that becomes difficult, to hire sometimes a woman or to pay her the same. So I think the European Union should step in and do some concrete economic measures. That's my point, to guarantee that this is possible, equality.
Yeah, the changes when it comes to enforcing this kind of equality, which it's necessary, it's not really surprising that they don't do enough, because I've got a few numbers here I want to run by you, Paco. There are only 25 female heads of states or heads of governments. So there are a total of 25 chancellors, presidents, prime ministers. Only 25 of them are female in the world. In 2019, only 31% of parliament members in EU member states were women, and only 27% of board members at the largest European public companies were female. So I think there's a massive problem with underrepresentation, because until you have enough women in the decision-making process, the decisions aren't going to be fair for women. And we've seen it again, and we're going to see further fallout over the next year, maybe even the next decade, from the pandemic. Women have been bearing the brunt of housework while simultaneously homeschooling kids or making sure kids are going to school on the laptop. There's been an increase of up to 35% in most EU countries of reports of domestic violence domestic abuse, I should say, during the pandemic. And 67% of those people said that COVID contributed to this abuse. So there's a whole other pandemic within this pandemic of gender violence, gender inequality. And I was hoping the EU would do more than just a directive this time. But maybe it's not a leap in the right direction, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
We won't
hope that they do more, like, anyway. As you say, like, I think the situation is that bad that they will have to enact some extraordinary measure. We discussed this a little bit with Moretti, the member of the European Parliament, last week, and she, as part of the recovery fund, is going to be particularly important that those resources are allocated, in my opinion, to contribute to reduce this dramatic situation that you were portraying.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. It's we do need drastic enough steps. Okay, let's turn to Germany, because something happened last Wednesday, Paco, that hasn't happened since the Nazis were around. Can you tell us what it was?
Yeah, so well, basically the Alternative for Deutschland, the German far-right party, was placed under surveillance on the 3rd of March by the Germany's Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. Basically, the party is considered a threat to the democratic election, and is put under surveillance by the German secret services, which is, of course, really worrying. Of course, is the first time, as you were saying, since World War II, where there are phenomena of extremism in Germany, particularly in Eastern Germany. The AfD got a lot of consent in the past years, and is not the first time that they are sort of they are a particular preoccupation, I would say, for the entire continent. There were episodes of violence. There were episodes of open racism, open propaganda, neo-fascist propaganda.
Yeah.
So continues this it's part of a general portrait of the right wing, far right in Europe, which is growing and is worrying, and it's time to act. And so hopefully this kind of surveillance will help. Unfortunately, though, actually there is an ongoing legal dispute for which the Tribunal of Cologne stopped the secret services from doing so, because the accusation is that they didn't do enough to keep the news secret, because on the 3rd of March, many German newspapers gave the news, and international newspapers, of this surveillance. So it's temporarily blocked, hopefully only temporarily.
You'd really expect the Secret Service to be better at keeping secrets, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. One would think that this was a move to, you know, for propaganda, especially to discredit the party, which, you know, as we said last time, there is always a subtle line, no? We were talking about it with Hazel, between enforcing, like protecting the democracy, and abusing of, like limiting the freedom of speech. In my opinion, that line is hate speech. When there is a hate speech, but hate speech, well, also there is a subtle line, because one thing is doing extremist hate speech against, you know, races or against part of the population. Another thing is make a satire, no, sort of
course, yeah.
musical critique. So it's a really subtle line that needs to be.
I mean, the threat must be pretty serious if the BFV, which are the German Secret Service, if they've decided to label them as a potential threat, they're probably past that line, I would imagine, because I can't imagine they would want to do this, make this announcement, unless they were pretty sure that there was a real threat coming, no?
Oh, definitely. And that was my point. So like one thing is a singer like Pablo Hasél we saw in Spain,
yeah,
who makes a song against the state, and that is definitely excessive. Another thing is, here we are talking about a party which is basically suspected of, you know, trying to restore fascism in Germany. And that is a serious threat that needs to, you know, better to be over.
Yeah, I mean, there's no gray area here. They're openly anti-Islam. They're openly anti-migrant. They're extremely extreme, you might say. But again, it is definitely good that the case has been held up in court, because if you're not sure, you cannot operate surveillance. You can't put surveillance operations in place unless you're sure about these things. So let's see. Hopefully we get the right results from the court, and we'll know the truth at least about what's going to happen. Let's stay over on the right wing, because it's where all the entertainment is these days. You want to tell us about our favorite man, Orban, in Hungary? What's happened with him in the last week?
Yeah, so Victor once again makes speak about himself. Basically, what happened is that he finally withdrew his party from the center-right grouping in the European Parliament, so he left the Conservatives. In fact, this was a heading off. This was heading off, basically a move to expel them over democratic backsliding at home that was already ongoing within the Conservative Party. So he would have been probably expelled in any case.
Yeah,
it's actually so. What actually is really strange, and like, you know, we are a progressive foundation, but of course we believe in the right to have everyone to have their own position. We respect conservative and liberal positions, but it's really worrying that someone like Orban was allowed to remain in the Conservative European Party for so long. Someone who clearly didn't have respect for the fundamental values of the European Union, and he clashed with the EU so many times. And in a way, being part of the Conservative Party helped him to be shielded from any serious penalty, basically. So on the one hand, is a really good news that finally the Conservatives are, you know, taking the situation of like the democracy more seriously in the European Union. We criticized many times the European Union for being more careful about, you know, economic policies than these kind of more serious policies. And lately it seems that the situation is a bit changing. The same with the recovery fund, you know, where respecting the rule of law is going to be one of the fundamental criteria to get to receive resources.
Yeah, it's going to be it'll be pretty interesting to see what he does next with Fidesz, with the party, because okay, they've left the EPP, the European People's Party, but a lot of that is pretty clearly down to the fact that Merkel is about to leave. Merkel and Orban had a pretty good working relationship that was mutually beneficial. Merkel got more votes for her policies in the European Parliament, and Orban was able to legitimize himself by being a member of the biggest group in the European Parliament. Now, Merkel's about to stand down in the springtime. So it'll be interesting to see, first of all, is he going to align Fidesz with another group in the European Parliament, or is he going to double down on the whole nationalistic rhetoric to reinforce his position in Hungary? Because they say in Hungary now that he's in the biggest, most dangerous moment since he took over in 2010.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that there is the risk, of course, like what worries us is the risk that sort of all these extremist parties sort of find a unity and self-reinforce each other. And in the end, Orban was already an extremist. It's not that leaving the Conservative Party will make it him an extremist.
No, so, and it's not even the most important group for him, because he has alliances that he cares about much more on that side of Europe, to his south, if I'm not mistaken. Now the EU is great. The EU pays for a lot of stuff, but
yeah. And I would say also that the contradiction within the sovereignist, the so-called sovereignist group, are emerging now, and like they were they pretended there were not before, but now that with the recovery fund, for example, now that economic policy are starting to come out, for example, even we discussed about Lega Nord, who voted in favor of the recovery plan, and they are a bit split in the extremist, like this sort of sovereignist group seems to be splitting. The danger is there though, like, so we need to be careful. I'm not sure what Orban is going to do. Probably we would need a Hungarian, I would say, someone.
What a coincidence, Paco. You've brought us nicely along to what will be the next podcast, which will be out on Friday, where we're going to have an expert to talk about this, and we're going to deep dive. We've done a lot of small reports about Orban, about Hungary. This is the week we're going to go in and we're going to focus on it for the podcast. So I'm glad you brought that up. Good man.
Of course, without.
All right.
That's
so
good.
I think we're more or less there for today, Paco. Yeah. Thanks a million for joining me as always. And yeah, we'll be back on Friday to talk more about Orban and Hungary and Fidesz leaving the EPP. And happy International Women's Day to everybody.
Happy International Women's Day.
Bye-bye.